We have the Georgia Court of Appeals. We now know we already filed an interlocutory appeal asking the Georgia Court of Appeals to take up the case involving whether or not Fani Willis should be disqualified from continuing to prosecute this case against President Trump and the other defendants in Georgia. You remember the trial court judge removed her special counsel who had taken in about $800,000 and say that he had been, because of their improper personal relationship and his lack of specialty in this case. Now, the Georgia Court of Appeals has done what we asked, which is accepted the case. So we know the judges, and we will now be able to file within that appeal a more extensive brief on why Fani Willis should be disqualified. And you see, again, this is not all about just fighting for, in this case, President Trump. It is again, it benefits him in the short term. In the long term, this is about all of us and the weaponization of the legal system, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, against conservatives and against people who speak out and are willing to put their names on the ballot or are willing to get involved in politics, or even their attorneys in this matter involving Fani Willis and, of course, in Georgia, where you've had these 16 defendants is trying to be some kind of RICO case. I want to go to Harry Hutchinson on this because, Harry, we talked about the timeline here, which pushes this into maybe March of 2025. So literally, likely after the next president of the United States is elected and takes the oath of office again, which if it's President Trump, could moot out a lot of these cases to begin with. But secondarily, what's I think important here is that the appeals court is taking this very seriously, this issue of who is prosecuting President Trump.
Absolutely. So, Jordan, we have seen a cascading number of cases brought largely by left-wing Democrats, which are designed to do one thing, to engage in election interference. These cases are designed to preemptively prevent the leading national candidate on the Republican side for the highest office in the land. And if you look at the Fani Willis case, and if you look at her relationship with the so-called special prosecutor, her romantic relationship, what do we have? We have evidence, I would argue, of a clear and unmistakable conflict of interest. And so the ACLJ has filed an amicus brief in this particular case. Among other things, we have argued that Fani Willis was a conflicted prosecutor whose actions were tainted by the odor of mendacity. That is taken directly from the lower court's opinion, and this conflict, we have argued, cannot be remedied after the fact. And this particular conflict adversely affects the public's perception of justice in this particular case. So if you look at the now assembled panel, which will hear the case, and if you look at the timeline, one of the things that is brilliant about this particular appeal and the acceptance of the appeal by the Georgia Court of Appeals is it now takes the matter out of the glare of the upcoming election.
Yeah, I mean, we were hearing a lot of people who, too, are just asking in the chat. You said interlocutory appeal. Jordan, what does that mean? To basically, to kind of explain that to people and not get too in the weeds, when you have a judgment like you did in the lower court, and the judge there said you've got to take off that special counsel who was brought in, and you feel as the party, well, okay, that's fine, but you didn't get to everything, which is we also ask for the prosecutor to be removed. You can file that as an appeal, and that's the interlocutory appeal, that not all of my claims actually got adjudicated. You didn't give me really a final answer on that, so I'm going to take that to the next level court when it involves in this case, Fani Willis, to get an answer on that specific question. So we filed there. Now you'll file a full, a brief on the merits of why you believe, and ours would be an amicus brief because you'll have other filers as well, probably likely joining with President Trump, on why she is improperly in this position. And I mean, you can almost go right to MSNBC and pull clips from MSNBC to give the evidence about why she is improperly in this position that she has basically run a campaign to prosecute President Trump and his allies, and won on that campaign, has already gotten in trouble with misusing funds and bringing in the special counsel, has not been able to get this case started. I mean, this was the first one going, and then everything came to a scorching halt. I remember when she showed up and she actually took the stand. I mean, Harry, there's so much to pull from that. And again, I always remind people, because we went back yesterday 13 months, just going back a few months in this case when Fani Willis showed up and actually walked into the courtroom and took the stand and was questioned.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at her testimony, you will find that she effectively indicted herself. And so, in other words, if you look at the evidence which she provided, there is a clear timeline suggesting that she was conflicted, that this particular special prosecutor, Mr. Wade, was appointed, at least in part, because he had a romantic relationship with the district attorney. And now the district attorney has paraded herself on news programs in churches in Atlanta, basically claiming that she is fighting for justice. I would argue that she is fighting to engage in election interference as part of the weaponization of the legal process designed to prevent the leading national candidate from basically running for office.
Harry, as you look at this, and now Jordan explained interlocutory appeal, and that's not an appeal that the appeals court has to take. It's not the appeal of a final judgment where you would get an automatic review. The fact that they took this case and that Judge McAfee kind of laid a roadmap with calling the odor of mendacity still remaining, as well as the fact that he said some of the things she did were improper and illegal within the case. And we also know the panel doesn't collect new evidence. They review the record and they determine whether McAfee arrived at the correct interpretation of the law. Is there anything you can kind of infer, the fact that they even took this up, that maybe they at least have their own questions about how this was decided at the lower court?
I think we can. So I think if you look at the lower court's opinion, the lower court basically reached the legal conclusion that the prosecution was indeed tainted. But nonetheless, the lower court said, we will not remove Fani Willis so long as Mr. Wade steps down. My own view is that once you have the odor of mendacity, once you have the taint, it cannot now be removed. And so what we need is a new prosecutor to be appointed by the Georgia Court of Appeals, and that would remain the removal of Fani Willis.
All right, folks, again, I encourage you to support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. You can do that financially. You can also sign the brief, which we, again, to remove DA Fani Willis, we'll be filing that brief directly so you can be part of that and defend the integrity of the justice system. That's up at aclj.org/sign. That doesn't cost a thing, and it's just important to us at the American Center for Law and Justice. But if you're able to make a financial contribution or even become an ACLJ champion, that means an automatic regular donor monthly to the ACLJ. It's a great day to do it after we talk about the victory yesterday, the continued battle here against this system. ACLJ.org.